So before we go into the webinar in more detail today, I just wanted to give a quick overview to the sorts of things that you can use the procedural mesh network for when dealing with motion graphics and also other parts of Maya as well, where it comes into its own. So an example of this would be using Mesh as a modeling tool, for example. So this goes far beyond just traditional motion graphics. This chainmail scene here that we're seeing was done with Mesh, and this forest environment as well, which is a very dense environment with a lot of detail in there, was all done using Mesh networks to deal with very large numbers of instances. What's new to Maya 2017 in terms of the Mesh network and the way we deal with these different behaviors is the ability to actually be able to use the new Mesh editor, which is a new feature in Maya 2017. And this allows you to be able to change the order in which your behaviors are being evaluated with a simple layering system. You can turn these on and off, you can mute, you can change the order in which these behaviors are being evaluated. So it really does give you a lot of flexibility, which previously in Maya 2016 extension 2 you would have had to have done using the node editor. So an example here of some mesh behavior would be a signal node, for example, and this is just a way to add some basic noise to your instances. So this is 4D noise in this case, and we're just changing it to apply it to either the position or the scale or both. So you have a lot of control over how these instances are being dealt with. You can change the type of noise being used, so we're switching it to Brownian motion. So you have huge amounts of control over how your network behaves. So another example of Maya behaviors is the strength node. So this essentially gives you the ability to be able to completely mute your mesh network and your behaviors. So you're scaling down all behaviors in your mesh network to essentially 0 to where the instances began before you started adding behaviors. Other parts of Mesh that are very impressive are the ability to be able to take your Mesh behaviors and use it to drive any other part of Maya that you can think of. So this is done via the Mesh breakout node, and this is the ability to take those behaviors and connect it to things like extrude in this case, or perhaps you could drive the joint rotation of a character via your Mesh behaviors. So here we're taking audio and we're using it to drive a Mesh network, which in turn drives the extrude operator on your model. So here's just a further example of using audio to drive behaviors in Mesh. So the other side to Mesh that we'll be covering in more detail further on in this presentation is the use of fall-off objects. So any behaviors that you have in Mesh, you can actually have a nice fall-off, and this can be driven by any number of influences, whether it's an implicit sphere as we saw there, or NURBS curves or meshes, and we'll cover this in more detail shortly. So we can use objects with colored textures to drive either shaders in Mesh or color nodes in Mesh. So here we're actually able to drive an Arnold shader with the color of the mesh that is driving the instances. The 3D type tool is also had a big overhaul in Maya 2017. And this gives us much cleaner 3D text. So this will deal with a lot of the intersection problems that you would have had in previous versions. So now we have a lot of control over how the 3D type is created.